Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Zige with File Open Systems, and on behalf of the entire File Open Systems team, I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. Is BYOD the weak link in your document security strategy? Now, if you'd like to ask any questions during today's webcast, please feel free to simply type them into the Q&A pod on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of our presentation today. Now, with that said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our moderators for today. We have our Vice President of Sales, Elizabeth Murphy, as well as our CEO and President, Sanford Bingham. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Elizabeth and hand over the call to her.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'd like to take you briefly through the agenda for today. So I think we all recognize that there is a need to share files securely. You may remember when President Obama was first elected, he made a very bold and unprecedented statement about one aspect of his working life that he said he would not compromise. He said, and something like this, secure business practice, and they're probably very well placed to make those comments. But the response from the President was quite clear, and it was this, that I hear you, but using my mobile device is pivotal to the way in which I collaborate effectively and I work effectively, and I need to be able to carry on using it. And I think any IT managers today faced with a similar situation with their users would be well placed to read and reread the story of King Canute, because this is a tide that's not going to be turned back. So we're going to be looking at how do we encourage productivity but also apply the necessary security without compromising either the productivity of the users or the security of the information. And then we're going to be looking at how FileOpen can implement products and functionality and technology in order to enable that. And then we're going to look at taking that theory and applying it to a live demo so you can see how FileOpen can effectively deploy productivity and apply security to those documents. And as Emmanuel said, we're going to have questions and answers following that, so if you do have any questions, we'd be delighted to help you. So what cases do we see our clients applying our technology? Well, it's across a very broad spectrum of applications. I think when the President was making that statement, what he was saying was that using a mobile device was essential to his being able to communicate and collaborate effectively. But for IT specialists, this presents something of a conundrum. They're facing demands for more flexibility from the users and sharing information with the users, but yet the risk for data loss has never been higher. Information security has been tightened, privacy regulations constantly updated, and even legislation is constantly weighing in with new rules and regulations that IT executives have to keep up with. In a recent poll, 70% of executives say it's very hard to keep track of sensitive documents and control what happens to them outside of the company boundaries. But the restrictions which IT specialists put in place can sometimes limit and constrict the way in which people want to be effective and communicate. Many companies are now panicking at the unrestricted use of mobile devices, and not only company mobile devices, but BYOD, bring your own devices. Also applications such as Dropbox and You Send It. We even see organizations blocking the use of those applications because the security isn't up to standard in terms of sending documents and being able to protect those documents and restricting those documents from leaving the firewall. If, however, you implement effective DRM, you don't need to worry about how those documents are being distributed. So even if the documents are distributed across a mobile platform, they're still secure and protected and controllable. Even if the documents are dropped into Dropbox or you send it, those documents have security in them that go with those documents, regardless of the vehicle which is being used to transport them. So many of our clients use our technology to protect what is the very essence of their organization, for example, their intellectual property. Because once that intellectual property is diluted and escapes the firewall, then they lose valuable information that can never be retrieved. Many of our clients use our technology to prevent loss of revenue. For example, if somebody's selling a book, they want to ensure that whoever has bought that book is then not capable of passing that book along to other people. Similarly, many of our clients are in the research sector, financial research, and they find that if they send out research that's unprotected, it can very quickly end up in their competitors' hands, but also to paying clients who then pass it on to people who haven't paid for the research. So they implement our technology in order to protect their clients and also protect themselves from loss of revenue from the documents being passed around without their authorization. Many of our clients implement our technology in an intranet application, so behind their own firewall to stop data loss outside of their organization. All of these companies use FileOpen to achieve due diligence, to apply rational and reasonable security to their documents and to achieve compliance. So FileOpen enables you to take back control of your information and have effective communication across any platform, including mobile devices and applications such as YouSendIt, Dropbox, etc. Now, I think we're all very familiar with the scandals and the headlines in the news about data loss, and we've all probably chuckled a little bit with a sense of schadenfreude over somebody else's mishaps. But the reality is that this could happen to anybody. And once that information has been disseminated, once it's out of the box, there really is no putting that information back in again. And as I mentioned, many of our clients use our technology to protect their intellectual property. For example, we saw an example of Coke there. One of our clients is Red Bull, and I don't know what they use our technology for, but I'm pretty sure that they would not want their recipe to be getting out into the open because it's the most valuable intellectual property. So what are the reasons why DRM hasn't been implemented as widely in the past? I think the main issue is that for DRM to be effective, it has to be easily available to the user. Typically, users are very busy, they're very impatient, they don't want to have to go through any procedures or hassles in order to access their information. Another key issue is that passwords are very often deployed to protect documents, but if passwords are passed on, then that security is completely eroded. For example, Box, and I think perhaps Dropbox, can apply passwords to their documents. But unfortunately, if their end users then pass those passwords on to unauthorized users, then anybody can access those documents, and there's no preventing that from happening. Users also want to have a lot of flexibility and a lot of control of the devices and viewers that they use. They don't want to be locked into a certain device. They don't want to be locked to a certain viewer. In addition to that, the formats keep changing. It's not just PDF documents that contain secure and sensitive information. It also goes across other formats which users need to access in order to communicate effectively. In addition to that, we have a very mobile workplace. We have people working from their homes. We have people traveling. We have people who are not particularly rooted to one domain ID. and they need to be able to work effectively across any geographic region. So a little bit of background about File Open Systems. We were founded in 1997, and we have the widest footprint in the DRM market. We were the first to take the technology to Adobe and introduce it to Adobe, and Adobe then made us their first strategic business partner. We now have over 1,700 clients worldwide, and as you can see, we go across every industry sector. We also partner with all the leading application providers in the document management arena. We have clients in every geographic region, and we also have clients in every industry sector. So what's our strategy? And if we think back about to the pain points about DRM, File Open strategy is to provide the easiest, simplest, effective way to secure information and have that information accessed by the users. So we don't put hurdles and barriers in front of our users who are trying to access information. We support the standard formats and viewers. We allow users to access the information without having to enter passwords. We also allow users to take the documents wherever they need to work and be able to access those regardless of where they might be working from and regardless of whether or not they have internet access. We also provide very quick and easy, cost-effective methods to secure information and deploy that information across multiple platforms. Some of our applications can be implemented in less than an hour. So it's very easy for non-IT people to set up a very secure infrastructure and to secure documents and deploy those documents across their user base and monitor the usage of those documents and control the usage of those documents simply by clicking on a button. It is designed for people who don't have IT backgrounds to be able to very simply deploy a solution very quickly and for the users to not have any hassles or burdens in order to open the documents and access them, regardless of the platform that they might be accessing the documents on. So I mentioned earlier that File Open has been deployed across every industry sector, and we have a quick look here at some of our clients. You can see that they range from manufacturing to entertainment to production to document security to publishing. So we have a look at one of our clients, Final Draft. They provide applications to secure scripts for the film industry. And using File Open allows them to add an extra level of security onto the documents so that the documents can only be read and received by people that they were intended for. We also have other clients such as Deloitte who use the technology to secure information about their clients and be able to effectively collaborate with clients by sending the documents securely. We have companies such as IHS who deploy the technology in order to protect their revenue. So when they sell their documents, which is in the standards industry, over the internet, the people that provide those documents to them, the standards organizations worldwide, can be secured that their documents are not going to be passed around to unauthorized users and therefore diluting their revenue. Other clients who use our technology are in the manufacturing industry, for example, Boeing and Embraer, who use our technology to protect their training information so that it can be secured and their intellectual property can remain within their organization. So how does File Open prevent data loss and secure documents? The first thing that clients want to do is to stop the documents being distributed to unauthorized users. So File Open provides the technology to ensure that only the intended audience for those documents will be able to access those documents. And at any time that you want to restrict that access, you can cut off access to the documents at any time, dynamically or within a predestined time frame. FileOpen also provides a very friendly interface for the users. So there's no barriers in order to access the documents. Once they've registered, they can simply access the documents without having to authenticate each time. FileOpen provides the highest level of document security using SSL 256 level encryption. This ensures that the most sensitive information can be distributed securely and that you can rest assured that your documents will not be compromised or passed around to unauthorized users. And what we also provide, and this is probably most important, is the kind of metrics and analytics to look at who has been accessing your documents. So people in marketing, for example, can look at how successful a marketing campaign may have been by looking at the usage and the access of certain documents. You can look at who's accessing your documents, which location. You can improve productivity by ensuring that you have the information to know who your clients are, where they're accessing the documents, which platform they're accessing the documents on. And you can therefore provide effective distribution of your sensitive material. So I mentioned earlier that FileOpen operates across a wide platform of technology. So we can provide a very quick and simple local encryption with a very simple to use tool. It provides cloud authentication, but the document information always remains with the users. You don't have to upload your documents into the cloud to encrypt them. The encryption is done locally. And the users can then distribute those documents and very securely, in a very secure manner, and then you can see exactly who's accessing those documents and when they're accessing the documents and where they are accessing those documents. But all the control about the documents and the storage of those documents is always maintained locally. And this is very important because many clients who have sensitive information do not want to be uploading those documents to the cloud in order to have them encrypted. We can also provide an on-premise solution, and this can integrate with any application that might be running on your platform. So for example, if you're using Active Directory, you will want to integrate with that to have a single sign-on. This can run on an intranet application completely behind your firewall, and it can be completely integrated with your workflow. In addition to that, we can provide a customizable toolkit. So you can take the toolkit and you can customize whatever application your organization requires so that it can be completely compliant with the environment that you're running in your organization. And this can run on multiple servers across multiple platforms, across multiple geographic locations, completely integrated. So what kind of controls can we put on the documents? First of all, I think the key aspect is controlling access. With FileOpen, you can stop forwarding of documents to people who shouldn't have access to them. So you know exactly who is opening those documents and you know who those documents are going to. And you can control access of those documents regardless of where they're located. Some of the controls that you can place on the documents are watermarking. So for example, if you have a watermark across the screen with the user's identity, it may deter them from getting their camera out and taking a photograph of the screen. You can also watermark a printed document, and very often we find that this is enough deterrent to stop people then taking a photocopy of that printed document and disseminating it, because the user's identity is all over the document itself. You can stop copying and you can stop save as. You can stop print to PDF. You can also prevent offline access, but if you do want to allow offline access, then the security remains with the document. So you can allow users to access the documents offline, secure in the knowledge that they cannot then circumvent any of the protection that's been applied to those documents. You can unshare the document at any time. For example, if an employee leaves the organization, you may want to curtail access dynamically. So you can do that at any time. You can also sync the documents so that you can have version control to make sure that everybody is using the same version of the document. FileOpen provides the greatest level of print control, so you can determine which printers the users can access, which printers they can use, and obviously there's going to be no print to PDF to circumvent the security of the documents. We also provide screenshot prevention. So if users want to use Snagit or any of the other tools out there, they're automatically prevented from doing so. We also provide, and we're going to show this a little bit in the demonstration, complete reporting and an audit trail of every event that happens with those documents. So every opening of the document, every usage of the document, every print of the document has a full audit trail which you can then report on and provide useful statistics to your organization. So we provide the most complete deployment across the widest range of devices and platforms in the DRM sector. Within the web sector, we can provide access to the users using the FileOpen viewer with a zero client install. So for the user, there is very little that they have to do other than to authenticate once in order to access the documents. In addition to this, we will be bringing out HTML5 compatibility, and this will provide the most complete, unobstructed access to the documents, because the users will be able to access the documents without having any client installs, any downloads, or all of the things which clients are usually opposed to doing. You can then access those documents, as I mentioned, across mobile devices. And we also support MS Office, the MS Office platform, as well as PDF documents, and a wide variety of viewers, not just the Adobe Reader. FileOpen has always been at the forefront of technology. I mentioned earlier that President Obama declared that he wanted to use his BlackBerry, and at FileOpen we were quite delighted because we have encryption for the BlackBerry platform. Having said that, as soon as we provided BlackBerry support, the iPad came out, and the enthusiasm for BlackBerry seemed to go away. But we realized we cannot rest on our laurels. We've got to always be at the forefront of pushing the technology. So we have provided mobile support. We also integrate with products such as Dropbox. We also provide a viewer so that the client doesn't have to have an install on their device. And our latest technology is providing HTML5, which will give the user the most seamless and painless integration with DRM technology without having to go through any hurdles or any client installs. So I would like to take you now over to the demonstration area and introduce you to Sanford. And we're going to put that theory of the technology into practice and show you it in effect in the demonstration. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Great presentation. So we got a chance to hear about FileOpen DRM, as Elizabeth just mentioned. And now I'd like to hand over the mic to our CEO, Sanford, so that we can see FileOpen DRM in action. So with that said, Sanford, take it away. Just 1 second, folks. Seems like we're having some technical difficulties getting Sanford's audio set up, but it shouldn't take more than another minute or so, so hang tight there.
I want to be unmuted. Good afternoon. Can I be heard now? Can you hear me? Thank you all for joining me and for your attention. So as discussed, and thank you, Elizabeth, thank you, Emmanuel, for attending this webinar. I'm going to demonstrate some of our newer mobile technology, bring your own device stuff, and let's begin. While I'm talking, I'm going to drop a file into a folder to demonstrate some encryption, and we'll come back to that in just a second. The rest of the demonstration is going to involve some devices, and we've got a few of these devices here connected to my machine, an Android device, an iPad, and of course a browser. The browser naturally running on my machine. I'll give you a little tour of my setup here on the iPad. I've got my camera, so there's my laptop and my desktop. You can see it's a cloudy day here in Santa Cruz. We can do this. It's always fun. Okay, so there's an iPad, and next to it, as I may have just shown you, is an iOS device. In one of the last webinars, we talked a bit about the encryption process and our viewer display mechanism, and you can see some empty file listings on the Android and iOS devices. We're going to see the document that I'm encrypting appear up there in just a moment, and while that's going, let me first do one other thing, which is that the encrypted document is, of course, an encrypted PDF to begin with. And when we open encrypted PDFs, and we're not really today concentrating on PDF, we'll really be showing the mobile technology. But I want to show you a couple of things. And of course, it's not necessarily the case that someone bringing their own device is bringing an iPad or an Android phone or device. They could indeed be bringing a PC, and it might be, or a Macintosh, and it might be advantageous to provide access on that platform. And as Elizabeth pointed out, we support PDF and Microsoft Office across a variety of different environments for PDF. That includes Adobe's readers on Windows and Macintosh, and also a variety of other viewers, Foxit, Nuance, Bluebeam, Xeon, Nitro, and so on. Not all of those in the market yet, but most of them will be fairly shortly. The piece that I want to point to at the moment is the watermarking piece, and we see here that this document is opened with a couple of characteristics that are not normally true of PDFs being opened in Adobe Reader. One of them is that we don't have save or print permission here, and that's a permission that's granted or denied at the server, as Elizabeth mentioned, and when it's granted in the print case, control is exerted over what devices can be printed to, what formats can be printed to anyway. But what we see here is that there's a watermark across the top that says it was opened by a user with my name and email address and company on a particular time and date, which is now. There's a diagonal watermark showing some of that same information, also an IP address, and down at the bottom we see, again, the same name and company and an identifier that we call a UUID that corresponds to the machine that I'm on. So that's the PDF representation, an encrypted PDF, and I was able to open it without, well, actually I was authenticated the first time, and there's explanation for that, and it's actually useful to show that I had to give credentials, and my machine then was registered at the server. So let's look now at the OPN version of this, and you see that what began as a single PDF file is now multiple OPN files, and there is a reason for that, having to do with speed of delivery to end-user devices. And if I refresh here, and I'll actually refresh everywhere, the listing page. So if we look here we should see the same thing appear everywhere. One of the previous webinars, I believe it was the last one, we went into some more detail about what can be done through this viewer interface, in particular the ability that it provides to restrict which users can see which links. In other words, not just which documents can be opened by a particular user, but which document links can be shown to that user. And I'll invite anyone who wasn't on that webinar and is interested in that to get it on demand, or of course we're happy to demonstrate that again to anyone who asks. So I'm now going to try to open the OPN version of the PDF that we were just looking at, and I'll call your attention to a couple of things. One is we see this loading, the split file, we call it loading, so that the document loads quickly, and then the rest of the document is downloaded in the background. And importantly, we see the same watermark across the top, the same diagonal, and the same one at the bottom. So now if we go over to the iPad and click the link there, and over to the Android device and click the link there, we'll see the same document appear. We're waiting for Android to refresh itself here, so we can bring that back. And we have the same behavior again across all three platforms, the same watermarks, the same streaming, split file streaming, and Android is coming together here. Okay, here comes Android. And the same general information with the IP address is the same everywhere. The username is the same everywhere. Some of these device IDs, or all of these device IDs, are different, and that is, of course, by design, as these are different devices. So we've got here in iOS and Android no print capability at the moment. That's something perhaps we'll be adding going forward, but at the moment these are viewers, not printing devices. In the browser, we do have the ability to print when it's allowed, but here, as we saw with the PDF, the print icon is disabled. Printing is not allowed for this document. Were it to be allowed, it could be allowed with additional watermarking capabilities so that the printouts has different watermarks, not the ones we see here, or they could be the same ones. So now that we've got the documents open everywhere, what we'll do is go into the server and manipulate the permissions so that, well, the documents display differently, and then we'll revoke one. So first, let's go in to the policy set, and this, for those of you who are considering interacting with us at the Rights Manager, the hosted, the simple 1-hour solution that Elizabeth alluded to, that's what we're showing here. This is Rights Manager, a hosted permission server, our permission server code running at the server. The same code can be run on your own data center, which we call Rights Server, or the same functionality developed internally from a toolkit that we provide. In case it wasn't mentioned, let me just make perfectly clear that these watermarks are delivered when the document is opened. So two users opening the same document, or the same user opening the same document at different times, can and normally will get different watermarks. The watermarks are delivered from the server. And here we can see some formatting information about the watermark. So if we were to decide that we wanted the header, rather than being this kind of gray that it is now, to be, let's say, blue, then we can change the coloring information, and when we reload the document in all of these environments, we should see, let's go back to iOS and we'll reload this document. Oops. And here in Android, we'll reload the document as well. And we should see across the top of the page here a blue watermark. Likewise, we can change the content of that watermark. So at the moment, we have the IP address, for example, being displayed in the diagonal watermark. And if we choose to take the, where am I at here? Sorry, this is actually the, this is the footer watermark, but I'll take the UUID and I will put the UUID also into the diagonal. There. And we'll go to here. Oops, that is the footer again. What we'll do is we'll modify that so that instead of saying first name, last name, company, we'll have last name, first name, company. Save that, change, and reload this document. So instead of being Sanford Bingham, it should become Bingham Sanford. Reload Android here. It's an interesting side note, by the way, that when we began the process of doing this demo, we weren't entirely sure that we'd be able to do this demo, principally because the technology for doing screen display, screen sharing on devices like iOS and Android is, shall we say, incomplete at this point. We weren't able to find a WebEx, or the technology that we're using for this webinar is not available on iOS and not available on Android. So we're using some other things here on the iOS side. We're essentially treating the PC as an Apple TV. On Android, we're using a remote kind of debugging tool, and it's instructive, I think, as far as the environment is concerned, that there is no way to do things like provide desktop screen sharing through WebEx and the like, or Adobe Connect. Those kind of applications simply at this point don't work on iOS. And there's a reason for that. It's Apple's design that the iOS platform has security in it that prevents one application from viewing another. And there's advantages to that. You can think of what we're doing here with our document viewer as being a little bit like a protected execution environment on these devices, and going forward you'll start to see more usefulness of that with respect to annotation of documents, collaboration on documents, communication through documents. So we've got now this document, and if you look at the bottom there, we're, sorry, we lost the Apple device. Let me bring that back. You can see that the watermark now says that my last name is first and first name is last. So let's now quickly, I will go into the server and find the document that I just encrypted, and I will revoke that document. And here it is, the OPN here, and we can see that this document, if we choose to, was opened, and we'll come back in just a moment to analytics of what can be done. But we can see that at 6:48, and these are GMT values, that the document was opened and so on. So what we'll do is we'll disable that document. So that document can now no longer be opened by anyone, and before we do that, let's also go in and look at the messages that users who are going to attempt to open that document now will see. We'll find in this list, and this list is multilingual, or can be. The client reports to the server what language it's in, and the server can have multiple strings for that language and can communicate with the user in the language that the user is reporting to the server. So if we look and see that the document was disabled, if I can find that value, not offline, no document, cookie not found somewhere in here. We've got not offline. Let's see, one, okay. Sorry, one moment here. I had this working yesterday. Well, I guess you'll have to take my word for it that all these strings are editable, and somewhere in here is one that would be modifiable. So let me reload this document, and I'll go over to the other devices and reload it there as well, or attempt to. And we see there in the browser that the document access is denied. The document's not available. If we go to Android and iOS, we see the same message. Again, that's a configurable message if you have time to configure it, which at this point we don't. So there we have the same document having been revoked on all of these platforms. And that document is globally dead. We can do more granular kind of revocations as well, revoking only a single document, a single device, and so on. So there we have Android, the browser, where that browser can be any browser, i.e. Any platform to first order, including Linux, by the way, as long as users have Chrome. Let me then show you one other thing on these other devices, which Elizabeth suggested was on the way, and indeed is, and that is that we can render that same document, not yet with all the back-end functionality, that is to say not yet tied into the permission server, but we are able to render that same document as an HTML5 file, and here it is, again, on all these platforms as HTML5. I'll try and get rid of that. Okay, so here we have HTML5 rendered on iOS, HTML5 rendered on Android, and HTML5 rendered on the PC. So use of this document, as was mentioned, is noted, it's controlled, it's logged, and if we look at users here, I'll quickly go to myself as a user, and if we look at the perms, we can see again that I've opened all these documents on various platforms, and that data, and there's a great deal of that data, is all stored in the database, can be extracted from the database, and once extracted from the database can be analyzed in various ways. So we see, for example, that among our test documents, we have the following breakdown, that 67% of our users of our eval documents are on Windows, and 12% on Mac, quite a few on iOS. We can break that down more finely as we get real data about which OS is being used in different versions of iOS in particular, and Android. We can look at users and count sessions by users, how many times a document was opened. We can look at characteristics of the user's environment. 84% of our users are English, 5% German, 9% French. We can look at things like how many times a document was printed by a particular user, and there is other data as well that we didn't get a chance to graph here, but we know, for example, how many times a document was accessed, but unsuccessfully, how many failed attempts were made on a particular document, and we can analyze the motion, if you like, of documents as they move around, shared or either with authority or not. And all of that can be done through a single server controlling access to multiple clients, including the kind that people like to bring with them. So with that, I'll pass it back to Emmanuel, and thank you all for your time and your interest.
Thank you very much, Sanford. Thank you for the demo. So it looks like we have just a few minutes left over for Q&A, and I really wish we had some more time because we've been getting some great questions from you guys. But without further ado, I'll get into our first. So Jessica Lee asks, she says, we are just starting to build our BYOD policy. Until we have it complete, we would like to disable access to our documents from any mobile device. Can your software help us with that?
Yes, I can answer that. We can. We have a policy mechanism in the permission server that controls the authentication of users, and one part of that user identification, device identification, involves what we call a client set, and we can set a value for the version number on multiple operating systems, and if you like, or for lack of a better term, lock out particular segments of the market. If you want, for example, only to allow Windows and not Mac and the others, you can do that. You can allow any particular device through that mechanism. There's also another way to do it through control over screen capture, which can restrict access only to those platforms where full control over screen capture is enabled, which frankly is Windows only.
Okay. Yeah. So another question that was asked is from Caroline White, and she says that our employees are allowed to connect up to 3 devices to our network. Is there any way to restrict document access to just those 3 devices?
Yes, that's the fundamental technology here, that we are identifying the particular piece of hardware to first order, the device that's accessing the document, and users can be given permission to enable any number of devices, and those devices can be individually or collectively revoked. So if
Okay. And our last question here comes from Samuel Patterson. He asks if he can get a copy of the presentation slides as either a PDF or PowerPoint file after the meeting. He needs a file as proof of training to his company and the ISC2. And I can actually answer that one. So yes, we will immediately after today's webinar, we will be sending out the presentation slides as well as a recorded version of today's webinar for your use. And I'd also like to note that if you have any questions that were not answered during this webinar, or if you didn't get a chance to enter them into the Q&A pod, please just feel free and go ahead and email us those questions at contact@fileopen.com, and we'll respond very promptly. So it looks like we're out of time. I'd really like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I'd like to thank our presenters today, Elizabeth Murphy, our Vice President of Sales, as well as Sanford Bingham, our President. We look forward to hearing from you, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you all.